I'm going to make you an offer. I've got 20 slides that I propose not using, and just talk about three things if you don't mind. So hands up who wants to see 20 slides. Nice. Okay. Thought so. You see my name there. There's actually 6 of us from eircom here at the session today. I'm joined by Caroline and Trish and Brian, who you might have seen outside. John Taylor and Cyril is here, and actually Paul, while not working for eircom, works very closely with eircom on behalf of eircom for clients. Okay, so that's the link. I may use some slides, so I might go through some of it quite quickly. But I want to talk about 3 things. I'm going to talk about eircom and give you some context as to why ISO 27001 and information security management systems are important to us. I'm going to make you an offer, and then I'm going to talk about the process we went through to obtain ISO 27001. And that's the 3 things I want to talk through. So eircom. Many of you in this room are customers of eircom, so thank you very much. Before I start, we're delighted to have your business. We are a company that represents, from an infrastructure perspective, about 11,000 kilometres of glass in the ground. That's the network. We have about 600 telephone exchanges and network points for data. We have about 2.6 million voice lines in the country, about 1 million mobile lines. We carry the bulk of voice traffic in this country in and out of the country. And we also have about 100,000 square foot of raised data floor, raised space in our data centres, for which we actually host thousands and thousands of physical and virtual servers. So security for us isn't an option, it's a mandatory. We absolutely have to be secure for our own purposes. And indeed, we always have been. I mean, the first shared network in any country was actually the PSTN. It was a voice network. An analog network, we shared. The first shared data network didn't appear until the late 80s with the evolution of shared IP trunks and networks. And before that, and since then, we still have a mixture of leased lines and shared networks. Cybersecurity is only an issue when things are connected and shared. If things aren't connected and shared, it's not an issue. The first hack, the first system vulnerability wasn't on a data network, it was actually on voice networks. Because the first network-connected device across a shared network was actually the PBX. And I remember the days back in the 80s where actually your PBX administrator was in charge of security because they're looking at call logs to see who made calls and make sure that the PBX is locked down. So cybersecurity isn't new, it's just topical. And security is always at the core of what we're doing. So here's the offer. Because we've got such a big infrastructure, and we actually do believe that we are a core part of the critical national infrastructure, we think we're good at this. And because we think we're good at it internally, we're beginning to offer that service out to our marketplace. So my colleagues are here with Paul to make you an offer that we will be willing to spend half a day with your organisation to talk about how exposed you might be, and assess how you might be in terms of maturity curve for governance, risk and compliance. And if you want to drop your name to my colleagues at the front desk, we'll enter you into a draw for those 3 sessions. And we're going to be using Paul's time to help us deliver those services. There's a prize that I'll talk about at the end if you want to put your name in the draw, but that's the offer. I'm also delighted to be joined in the room to accompany the eircom team by John Taylor, who's our, for want of a better way to describe him, one of many responsibilities, is actually our Chief Risk Officer. So he's the guy who actually has to make sure that those 2.6 million lines, 1 million voice subscribers, thousands of servers, 100,000 square foot of data center space is safe and secure from our perspective. And I'm delighted you had the chance to spend the entire day here, so things are obviously going well, John. So, yeah. So that's the eircom story, that's the offer. Let me give you some context as to ISO 27001. When I was preparing for today's session, Paul kindly invited me to participate in, I looked at the business press in the week commencing June 13th, I think it was. And there were 4 seminal publications that issued that week. The Economist on June 16th, McKinsey Quarterly in June, I think, 23rd, the FT on June 22nd, and Accenture issued a mobile security report around June 25th. So every business decision maker, if you want to use that term, has security as one of the issues that's been reported in the business press. Not one of those articles mentioned Stuxnet or Zeus or botnets or any of the things that we've been scared about today. They all talked about governance, people and process. When we go to an organisation, from our perspective, and we talk about networks, we always typically say, well, have you got a network diagram? And now someone always gives it to us, and we always argue it's not complete. We always end up drawing it out again from scratch. And that's a typical whiteboard of a not too complex, not too large an organization, where we look at how many different devices and different servers delivered on that network. And as we all know, as we all talked about today, the network is changing. It's getting bigger and more complex. People are working in different places, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So hyperconnectivity is a term, it was actually a marketing term the organisation called Nortel introduced about 5 years ago to explain the hyperconnected world. From our perspective, creates an enormous hyper risk and a big job for John to deal with. So that's the kind of intro. What I would say is our biggest problem isn't technology. Our biggest problem, as articulated on last Wednesday's Financial Times, of which this is a cartoon, is actually the organisation models that we have. We're all willing to work from home. We want to work from home. We all want to have these complex matrix organisations, which from a security perspective is the biggest painful aspect of what we have to try and do. Protect those people, the organisations from the malware and malpractice that we see going on. So let me just not dazzle you. I want to flick through a couple of slides to get to the ISO 27001 story. Actually, the previous slide is important. It is a standard. It's an ISMS standard. It is one of probably 38 possible standards that overlap, with about 10,000 controls that potentially overlap from many different countries. And at our organisation, we try to assess, how much time does it take an organisation to comply with controls, policies, etc. And it can take upwards of 20% of your time, which in a non-discretionary environment where budgets are tight is significant. So therefore, standardisation and automation is a core part of what we try and do. So we've always been doing it. It's always been part of our core. Customers are asking to do it. The cloud is there. We are the cloud. So let's actually make our intelligence and our experience available to the marketplace is our theme, essentially. So we have a multi-layered approach. These are the kind of boxes we typically talk to. We do have DDoS, so we are part of the 90% tier 1, thank God. Secure data center footprint. Securing a raised floor space of 100,000 square foot of data center is not an easy job. To put that in perspective, the convention centre here is about 400,000 square foot floor space. So the data centre space we're trying to secure is about a quarter of the size of this building and actually hosts a significant part of the national infrastructure from IT delivery capability. So therefore, to make sure that we manage that in the correct way with people and process and systems and technology, we embarked very specifically on making sure that our latest data centre, which is not the one that Paul showed you in the diagram there, our latest data centre is somewhere out in the airport area, that I can't tell you about. And we wanted to get that certified under ISO 27001. Now, for me, as an owner of a set of customers for which standardization is very important, that sounded like a big, big job. And to a certain extent, it is. The building blocks are for you there. But once you get the building blocks there, it's actually quite straightforward. So I just want to tell you that story. But to get it done, to get to sell the business case, we're getting certified for ISO 27001, we had to look at the business case. And there are numbers associated with this that I'm not going to show you. But essentially, there's direct benefits, as you can see, which you expect in terms of better control, maybe systems rationalization, complying with legislation, which is very important, particularly if you're subject to the stock exchange rules around Sarbanes-Oxley, etc., and PCI DSS if you're transacting credit card details on your systems. But for me, the most important benefits are actually indirect. Those that you can't necessarily put a value on from a financial perspective. And they are management control, predictability, forecastability, and be able to respond quickly, which gets to contingency planning and risk management. Back to my colleagues this morning from RMI, ISO 27001 helps you respond more quickly in the event of an issue. And for me, enhanced partner and customer trading confidence as a significant part of the national infrastructure. So quickly, how we achieved that effectively, and this just illustrates the stages involved in attaining ISO 27001. It was a 10-week engagement. It took probably 3 to 4 FTEs who were working on this as part of our data infrastructure with external assessors. And effectively, it follows a 3-stage process. Stage 1, the auditors come in and have a chat. From a euphemistic point of view, they kind of do a soft verification, validation of what's there. You know, statement of risk mitigation plans, etc., etc. More akin to the tell me and show me phases of the RMI methodology this morning. Then they go away. They tell you where they feel the issues are. You give them a number of weeks to work upon them and plug any gaps that might exist for the second stage audit, stage 2. And that's actually the formal audit, where they come in and actually put the skin or put a hand in the wound, as it were, and try to understand, tell me you're doing it, show me you're doing it, and more importantly, prove that you're doing what you're saying you're doing and complying with the process and governance standards in ISO 27001. They don't tell you how you do on that day or maybe that week. They come back and tell you a number of weeks later when they confer with the standard bodies and make sure that what they're assessing actually they can argue into the ISO organisation for. And they come back and say yes or no. And if it's no, it's clearly no with some clarifications and gaps to plug, or it's seriously no and you're way off the mark, go back and start again. And that's the end of it. We got it first time through on December 15th, which we're not surprised at. We had the building blocks. But then comes the hard part, and that's stage 3, which is the re-verification and re-audit and re-verification and re-audit. So constantly having to prove and prove and prove and prove all the time that you're following the standard. So it's not just a once-off, let's get the standard and I'll go out and celebrate and put the badge in the data centre. It's actually begin to design the organisation to fulfil the standard and embed that in the ongoing process going forward. So that's our 27001 story. It's very important to what we do. It's a base standard that we're required to have to support some financial organisations that are subject to PCI DSS compliance. And having ISO 27001 helps us help them to get PCI compliance verification. So that's it. That's the end of the kind of the ISO 27001 story. Let me go back to the offer. So what I have there is a simple slide. We have 5 services in the eircom portfolio. They're all secure by design and default. So security isn't just a standalone. It's part of what we always do and always have done. What we're doing on top of that is establishing this practice we're calling governance, risk and compliance in our teams. And the offer today is to leverage our team, perform a short assessment, maybe a sort of security risk assessment, maybe a security health check, talk about the security operations model you've adopted. It's not always about buying new technology. We don't need you, and would never suggest that you should go out straight away and buy an Arbor or an Adverse or an Observe IT or talk to software. It's not about necessarily technology. Sometimes the technology is enough. It's just about the operating model, and that's where we'd start. So the prize I mentioned, if you submit your name for the free audit, there are 2 important rugby matches happening during the summertime before we head off to New Zealand. I'll be there, and I'd love to have some of you there with me. But after the audit happens, we can talk about the results. Thank you very much.
Any questions for